Stream is live.
Well, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. It's Friday, May 23rd today. I don't know why I put 13th. 23rd.
Because you only have so many fingers. You forgot to use your toes.
That's probably about the size of it, right?
You know what? Once you run out of toes, you got to start with your fingers again. That's why.
So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. There we go. So it's Friday, May 23rd, and we're here. Okay, so quick question for you, Dave. Postal Strike update. Have you heard anything this morning?
Yeah, just what I read there in that last article that the Canada Post has decided. The postal workers have decided to work to rule, basically no overtime.
Yeah,
and they're not going to do any overtime, so it'll slow mail down, but it's not going to bring it to a halt. I think they're in a situation where they just keep getting the same answer back from Canada Post. We can't afford you, basically. Canada Post says we lost $4.3 million last year, $5 million this year. We put $1 billion in. We're losing money. We are in a very bad shape. They say they're existentially.
Yeah.
And
get it. We all know what's happening with the post office and how things have changed, because we don't write hey grandma letter that used to probably prop up the post office when you and I were kids, and your parents probably told you, Dave, you're going to write to your grandma today.
Yeah, and it's not just even that. Even the bills. Yeah. I still got a couple of bills by mail.
Well, I get my bills by mail, and the reason, for example, credit card bills, for example, I actually, the reason is, and now the weird thing is, I like this kind of bill to come through even though what I'm going to happen is I'm going to put it in my drawer for a week.
Yeah.
The fact is that I open the drawer and I go look at it and I go, okay, I've got to pay that, and today's the day I've got to pay it, got to figure out how to pay it today.
Yeah.
So, but the bill's there. It's a constant reminder.
Yeah. So that's, there you have it. And, but in my case, I just have them automatically withdraw whatever I owe them.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Yeah.
That way I never get in behind. Never. And accumulate a lot of points.
The thing is, though, of course, the post office is going to cause delays being an overtime ban, because the post office has largely been run on overtime the last 10 years.
Well, is it really running that well? There's what they've tried to do. The post office tried to reduce the amount of money that it pays out. Is rather than pay overtime, it wants to hire part-time people just for the weekend and some postal deliveries during the weekend, so it doesn't have to pay overtime to existing employees, which of course they don't like. But if you have that part-time service, you have much more reliable service, because the union members have the right to refuse the overtime.
Yeah.
But if you have a bank of part-time workers that are looking for part-time work, then they're more reliable, because they want that part-time work and they're going to come and do that.
Maybe they don't have the same conditions. Maybe they don't have the same pay structure. Maybe they're on minimum wage.
No, they're going to be paid the same, but they're not going to be paid overtime wages.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. And they may not have the same benefits.
But again, you could shuffle some of the existing workers who maybe want only part-time.
Well, it comes to a point, but then they can't, because then if you're a union worker, then you are stuck, because you can't shift yourself to now to be a part-time staff
Yeah, true.
without interfering with the
Forgotten about
overtime that your brothers and sisters get on
Yeah.
the weekends.
Forgotten about that. Yep, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So so basically what the Canada Post has done, and it's a big surprise to me that they've been able to hold out as long as they can, because usually the government caves in situations like this, but they are just kind of insisting we cannot afford you anymore, which is a dangerous kind of a thing, if you ask me. For a union member, when they say we just can't afford you, that means they can dissolve whole sections of the Canada Post. And
well, the problem here is that I view Canada Post as a service. I think it should still at least break. But hey, does that mean that we have to put the postage costs up? Probably.
Yeah.
Because for many years,
we can't keep doing that. The thing is, it's running inefficiently.
Yeah.
Canada Post was able to pay for itself for most of its existence.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't get much of the way of government.
Well, they need to get things like contracts to deliver Amazon and things like that.
Well, that's easily said.
I know
that's easily said, and it just hasn't happened.
Yeah.
I
grant it's very easy to say that. I grant that.
I'm looking for the demands. Like, for instance, their demand for 24% increase in wages over, was it 4 years or something like that? 6% per year. Well, the government's offered them less than half of that.
Yeah.
So there's a big impasse there, and the workers want protection against technological advances. In other words, technology comes in. Yeah, that's another thing. How, I mean, that's, they did that. They did that in England, and what happened is their industries went completely behind the times.
Yeah.
Right.
How are you going to fall behind? Our most obvious way that you're going to get technological advances is going to be in the sorting, in the sorting rooms, right? And probably technology is already largely in control of that.
Yeah. So there's and here's what there's another article here somewhere about what their demands are, but basically it really boils down to the fact that Canada Post can no longer pay for itself, and it has to subsidize the mailrooms. It is an organization that is not competing well with other delivery systems.
Yeah,
but has to look at itself as more of a business. And when you're working against places like UPS or whatever else there is out there,
yeah,
you have to understand that you're working against non-union people.
Yeah,
and they have limited amounts of benefits they have to pay and all that other stuff. So what the union has to do here is really search into itself and say, how can we preserve this as a business that can sustain a workforce? The government does not have to make a profit on the postal service, but it has to pay for itself. How can we sustain that? And if we demand that the government protect our jobs against technological advancements, what are we telling the world? We're telling the world we will always be slow and behind everybody else. So the union has to get in there and say, how can we preserve this as a viable business for the Canadian public, where we can maintain our jobs and get rather good pay and benefits and maintain ourselves, rather than make demands on the government that are unsustainable. And when the government looks around and says, you know what, you cost us too much, we're going to have to cut you. How much sympathy are you going to get from the average Canadian? Particularly when the average Canadian doesn't get much mail at all. So basically, you have to think of yourself, where can we zone in? Like small businesses, let's make sure we have absolutely the best service for small businesses, or even the average person or whatever.
It's a small business that suffers mostly in this. because the small business is not going to call UPS. When they need, or largely is not going to call UPS, right? They're going to call Canada. They're going
Well,
to
that's what I mean.
put it
So the
into Canada
postal
Post.
service, but the reliability of UPS and other carriers are better than the post right now, because Canada Post
Yeah.
keeps threatening strikes. So what are you going to do as a business? Can you
Yeah.
rely on
Yeah.
that? Can you
No.
imagine everybody running up to this particular time? I was going to write a letter to the tax department because they screw up my taxes. So I was going to write a letter, but I delayed doing that because I didn't know what they were going to do in the mail strike.
Yeah.
You see, and then you had my whole idea here is, and it's probably not my own. It's probably many of the union members too. How can we become a viable business? I mean, you can't do that if you deny technological advancements.
And that letter you were going to write, probably nowadays there's actually a portal that you can put that letter on, right? Or a click here to click here to send us a letter. So you can even send a PDF.
Yeah, well, anyway, although I'm going to put it, I'm sending it hard copy because they're goofs. If they send a hard copy,
yeah, but I'm not talking about that, your specific letter, but you get what I mean. In nine out of 10 things that are being done nowadays, you send the letter, it's going, if, for example, if I'm sending you a letter, Dave, I'm going to do it by email if I know your email address. Right? At work, if I'm sending a letter to you, I'm likely going to send it by email, not by post. 9 times out of 10.
Thanks for the warning. I can block you before you even start.
If I know your email address.
Well, yeah. I think just about everybody in the city might know mine. Seems the amount of mail I get and the amount of email I get.
Is that so? Is that 9.1 billion people in the world that know Dave's email address because they keep sending him junk mail?
Yeah,
it's that Chinese. It's that Chinese stuff. Yeah. And if it's not Chinese, it's Arabic or Sanskrit. Yeah. So yeah, they've got some hard thinking to do, and I'm glad that sense has prevailed.
Well, look, my biggest hope is for the union to be able to come out of this with a sustained contract that will keep them going and leave it open enough that they can advance. But if they put restrictions on technology,
yeah,
to protect themselves, that'll never work because that will put them behind. And then eventually they'll be thrown right out because their service will be behind. They have to be top flight, a top flight service. That's the important part. They have to be out there. They have to be delivering things. They have to be reliable, and they have to be affordable. If they're not those things, then the history of Canada Post, or at least for most of Canada Post, is toast.
And
basically what the union has to do is link arms with the government and maybe even hire somebody. Said, how do we make this more a viable company? What can we keep and what can we lose?
Yeah.
How can we service the public?
What can we keep and what do we have to lose? And even to some extent, they're going to have to look about putting normal, maybe cutting delivery times down to 3 deliveries a week or something.
I'm not even sure it's that. What has happened in the post, like if you go back to the 70s, there was way more postal routes because there was way more mail.
Yeah.
Now those postal routes have got double or triple the size of their, a guy would be doing 2 routes instead of 1 compared to what is 70s because of the mail load.
Yeah.
So the postal, actually the guys out there delivering, and I don't really think that's the future of the post office anyway. I think the future of the post office is catering to small businesses and package delivery. those kind of things. They got to get into
Yeah, those
that
are
big
the
time.
ones that they're the money makers.
Well, and it's also the thing that serves the public, because obviously we don't have that many letters.
Yeah.
And even though the letters we do get do serve the public by getting them, but if we want our postal service to provide reasonable priced delivery system nationwide, then they're really going to have to think more like a business rather than a union.
And actually,
that's probably the problem here.
And I think the other thing about this is that the post office, the Canada Post, needs to think more like a business than it does a damn a part of the government. It needs to get reliable managers out there that can think about things like that. About the future.
It has in the past already be a corporation and tried to fashion itself around as a business, but it also has the fact that it is a government employee too.
Yes, I know.
So, to strive for profitability, and then here you have the situation where, like we've said the last couple of days in a row, Canada Post used to pay for itself. Now the government has to pay to keep it floating.
Yeah,
I believe arbitration is required here. I really do, and the arbiter actually, in a different article I was reading, the arbiter did point all of that out. It pointed out all the places where the government corporation is, Canada Post, is losing money, and where a more reasonable sort of course going forward. It seems like the Canada Post, who hasn't been able to keep up with inflation, but tell me who has.
Yeah.
Tell me who's getting a job that kept up with inflation.
Nobody. Everybody's lost.
It took a long time to get one, but then they were selling cars, so of course the car company can afford it. But you're not selling more mail. You're making less and less money and asking for a bigger and bigger wage increase. Now, on the surface, it sounds fair. We're government employees and we should be kept up to inflation like every other government employee and all the different bureaucracies, but it's a completely different section of the government. It is, and I don't know. I wish them the best, because if they make one wrong move or hold on to antiquated ideas of not bringing in technology and that kind of thing, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot.
Absolutely.
It'll be another nail in the coffin for Canada Post.
Yeah.
They don't stay modern.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. And the whole business has got to be modernized, and they've got to bring in somebody who's going to think about that. And I think there's some major changes that have got to happen.
Yeah, and both the union and Canada Post has to be much more flexible. Now, the union has to be flexible enough to understand that there's only so much the government's going to be able to pay out. The taxpayer is going to pay out.
I had this. Do you remember those stores that actually had suction tubes in them?
The what?
Do you remember stores that had suction tubes in them? You used to pay your money. The person at the cash desk would put it into a suction tube, and then 20 seconds later your change would come back. You don't remember such stores. They had them in London.
Well, they here in the hospitals had the vacuum tubes.
Yeah.
They would send a hard copy message to a different floor, and it would be just through vacuum tubes. And some hospitals might still use that as a confirmation for what kind of medicine somebody has to have or whatever.
Well, when I was a kid, I thought up a mail system that basically meant that everybody had vacuum tubes. Every house had vacuum tubes.
Well,
and the
there
mail
you
will
go.
be delivered without actually having a mail carrier through a vacuum tube system.
Well, the Canada Post is going to demonstrate in front of your house right now. The word is
No,
out.
as I said,
He wants to modernize. He wants to modernize the
that
vacuum
was
tube.
a childish thought when I was back, when I was young. I thought that would be a fantastic way to deliver mail, but we'd all have to have one of these vacuum things in our house, inside our house.
Yeah, and if you're not getting messages, you could use the vacuum tube to clean your house too. Ooh, just put a hose on it and get your vacuum attachments. And
No, the other thing.
somebody gets their message, opens up their tube, and a bunch of dirt comes at them.
The other thing about that is, of course, going the other way around. If you've got mail to send, you drop it in the vacuum tube.
Yeah, well, we can put that to bed right now. We can assure Canada Post that we are not endorsing that idea, and no need to come.
Why not? Why not? It's a damn great idea. The trouble is, you got to spend billions of dollars on infrastructure. I know. Yeah.
Oh, well, that does sound like a government caveat, doesn't it? It sounds like something the government would do. Let's spend billions of dollars on an old vacuum cleaner system.
Yeah, I know. And hey, I talked about it as being something I remember from my childhood, fanciful dream more than anything else. Anyway.
Yes, well, like I said, we can assure Canada Post that we weren't really serious about that. Don't come demonstrate in front of Peter's house. He lives on 2nd Avenue.
Yeah, the other end of 2nd Avenue.
Yeah.
All right.
I live in Hamilton.
Yeah. Okay. Welland Mayor's Walk. So the Welland Mayor is Saturday, June 7th, 10 to 11 a.m. in Market Square in Welland. He's saying, come and step into summer with Mayor Campion.
What the hell is this all about, Peter? Tell us all about it.
Well, I'm just putting it up there as a thing for everybody to see. Takes place 7th of June, Market Square. You know how we kind of put all these ones up, when we see them, right? Just to let everybody know. Okay.
So basically, if you're just hanging around and you want to go for a walk with the mayor and listen to his propaganda, you could do that on June 7th at 10 a.m. at Market Square in Welland.
Yeah, exactly. And it's free. Actually, that's
who's going to pay for that? It's free.
Well, it's free, but actually,
who's going to go walk with the mayor for money? Yeah, really. The mayor said,
I was going to say, it would be
hang out with me. Well, go get stuffed.
It would be a perfect money raiser, I would have thought, but still, for all ages. And hey, time to wag your ear off about the 5th Avenue lights or whatever, whatever your problem is, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's got to watch out for things like he might get kidnapped, but then somebody might not notice that he's kidnapped.
Who's going to pay for the mayor?
Yeah, they're going to kidnap him and make sure that their streets gets plowed first thing every snowfall, or they're not going to let him out. And
okay, Mike has got a question. Mike has got an idea. Take him to a homeless encampment and ask him serious questions.
I got another one. Well, we could take our own mayor and roll him in the cyanamide dust and see what he says on his walkabout. But anyway, this is so okay. Enough said. Mayor Campion is going for a walk, and you can go walk with him if you want.
Yeah. Okay, I'm talking about this. Niagara Falls Hydro Holding Corporation has got a board dividend to be paid to Niagara Falls, and this is $22 million. Yes, there are 6 zeros after the 22. I checked it, and I double checked it, and I triple checked it.
So you want to expand on this? This is
Well,
a
basically,
letter I see. It's just a letter, right?
just a letter.
From
Memo from Niagara Falls Hydro to Mayor Diodati, Tiffany Clark, etc. That the council receive the council receive the
accept receipt of Niagara Falls Hydro Holding Corporation consolidated audited financial statements approved by the Niagara Falls Hydro Holding Corporation. And as a shareholder, please be advised that a dividend of $22 million payable to the corporation of the city of Niagara Falls for the year ended December 31st, 2024 was declared by Niagara Falls Holding Corporation. So what are we going to do with that money?
Yeah, it's going to go into the city budget. That's a sizable chunk that I'm hoping that we actually spend wisely. In fact, actually, right now, I'd be saying,
we get this every year.
Can we? Yeah, but could we need to plan on actually seeing how we can save on the levy?
How much do we need to reinvest? How much money that has to go back into Niagara Falls Hydro Holding Corporation?
Well, that's a fair question. That is a fair question.
How does that work? How does that work, Peter? You know anything about this?
Well, actually, that is a fair question about what we need to reinvest in, in hydro, because obviously things like hydro poles cost money, don't they?
Well, yeah, there's certain I don't know much about this holding company at all. What's it all about?
Basically, pretty well every city has their own hydro company, except for St. Catharines has Electra, which is a larger corporation. It's the same corporation that Hamilton has, and a few other cities use Electra. Most cities have their own hydro company. There's Electra, there's Hydro One.
So what do they do?
Operate.
So what do they do? Tell us what they do.
They actually provide the electricity to the home. They are not they don't generate electricity. They basically take electricity
distribute it,
grid and distribute it.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously, when
this $22 million, how much do they owe to the generator? Is any part of this owed to the generator?
It's a good question. Don't know. There's no information here about that. Yep.
See, I just don't know how it works and how much like Mike Cushman's put $22 million and our taxes are going up, he said.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much of this $22 million is for us to use.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So and the thing is that there's one of these paid out every year, but I would say that we should be looking at how can that $22 million ensure that 2026 taxes do not go up.
That's not going to happen. That's simply not going to happen.
Yeah. Or to minimize the
impact. Not going to happen because all services cost more money. Like we just talked about the Canada Post. Canada Post are pushing for increases. Well, say to get part of that increase, well, that has to be, whatever the city has to pay for Post will go up. The tariffs and all other things that are putting a burden on supplies and that all has to be put in. But even taking away the tariffs and things like that, all things are going up in price because every worker is demanding better wages to keep up with the prices. So the prices keep going up. So basically what they have to do is try to maintain inflation at no more than 2%. So you can pretty much figure that every year you're going to get a 2% increase. Now the city and the region have gone higher than those every year so far. And because inflation was not held down to 2%, obviously. And the region, we find Bob Gale trying to draw the line at 3.5% after we've had an 8 and 9% increase in a couple of different years. So to keep taxes down, maintain them is about the best you're ever going to do. But it's fanciful to think you're going to reduce taxes unless you reduce services.
Yeah.
Or postpone some city, like if they're going to build another pathway or walking trail or something like that. That's about the only way you're going to get taxes. So let's be very, very clear about that. No amount of money from the casino or from the holding company is going to magically reduce your taxes or even maintain them. What you're going to do is with sound governance, you may be able to limit your tax increases to 2% inflation, something like that. You may be able to forego raises in taxes if you have an especially good year at the casino or something. I don't know, but let's keep that very clear. Death and taxes are the only two things you're guaranteed out of life. Is death and taxes will be from the beginning to the end of your life. So,
yeah.
I hate to throw a wet blanket on anybody's hopes that their taxes will be reduced or even maintained, but I really can't see it. But what we have to do is ask for better governance and better spending. Like we don't need a concrete ping pong. We don't need a concrete ping pong table. Basically,
Yeah. All right. Okay. So moving on, 2 Israel embassy staffers were killed in Washington, D.C. And I think that was an important thing because important thing to discuss because that's vile. That's just unacceptable. These are U.S. people working in an embassy.
Who is this? This guy's name is Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So he right away you could say, well, he's probably not Palestinian. He's probably not from the Middle East at all. Why did he think gunning down 2 young people that work in the Israel diplomatic service is going to get anywhere? Now, he yelled after that, free Palestine, free Palestine. Well, that's the worst thing he could have possibly done for Palestinians trying to get fair treatment.
Yeah.
When you do, because Netanyahu will jump all over this and rage against anti-Semitism and see what happens. In the meantime, it distracts from the massacres that he's going on. He's engaging in Gaza. So who is this nutcase? For one thing, he had a gun because anybody can get a gun in the United States. Anybody who wants to can get one and then go shoot anybody they want to. So getting the gun is no big issue for a guy, anyone in the States. So if you're assassinating someone, you can get a gun easily and do it. So this guy had come into town and he was on a different mission. He was there for his work or his job. And then there was this sort of Israeli event. I guess, I don't know, it was a social event or something like that at the embassy. This guy starts pacing around, walks up to 4 people and guns down 2 of them.
Yeah.
Who is this nutcase?
Yeah.
What was his motivation? I'm sure that he would be completely denounced by most Palestinian organizations because it just puts a really bad look on them. I'm very sure that he's a lone wolf, that he's done this on his own without, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't like, who does that? He just ruined his own life and he took 2 lives, 2 young lives. You don't get those back. They killed a young man and a young woman needlessly. Like at the beginning of their life.
This is as disgusting as any killing in Gaza.
Any kind of murder like that, any cold-blooded murder, whether it's in Gaza or here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 2 people here in Gaza. It's usually about 20.
Yeah, I know.
Including children. So this, anyway, there wasn't really any good security too. Like the police weren't involved in this, but they had a private security outfit or something like that. So the security that was there, when especially when there is so many nuts about, and Israel is being really, under the microscope, and where was the security? You have people walking around, pacing in front of the building, and then walking up to somebody and killing them. Where was the security? Where was the cameras? Where was any of that?
Yeah.
I think Netanyahu loves this because he can run with this like crazy and say see how this has happened, but we don't have a whole lot of information on this guy at all. And
yeah, and he's fulfilling the classic lone nutcase, scenario.
And like, he's got to be off his lid. He just ruined his life. He just murdered. Like, I mean, take away the fact that he's just robbed the world of two young people with a great potential, right? He's taken that away from them. He's put incredible sorrow on their families, and he's just ruined his life too.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
An idiot. Yes. What an idiot. Yeah.
What are you doing? You won't get your life back. And what you've done now, all you had to do is think about it. You're going to remove the life of two people you don't even know, and you're going to ruin your own life. Can't you think twice? No matter how angry you are, can't you think twice?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I don't know who this Rodriguez guy is, but I mean, seriously, I mean, things are as difficult as they can be, and you get a lunatic like this. He was in town. Now, this wouldn't even have happened if he hadn't happened to be in town doing for his job.
Yeah.
This is not normally where he lives. So he came into town. He sees this event going on at the embassy and decides he's going to kill somebody. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it wasn't the embassy. It was at the Capital Jewish Museum.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah, but there were embassy workers.
Yeah, they were embassy workers working at the. I don't even know that they were working. The early reports that I heard is that they were actually there on a night off. It was something they were invited to.
Yeah, they were embassy workers. Actually, I think those two were actually going to get married.
Yeah, that's exactly what I heard. Yeah. And wasted life. Wasted. Yeah, absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, Elias Rodriguez fired nearly 24 shots. Where did he get all the guns?
Yeah.
24 shots, over 24, nearly 24. So he got over 20 bullets, and he gunned down a victim. As the victim tried to crawl away. What? That was Sarah Milgram, the young lady that was murdered.
Yeah.
And he was caught in surveillance, but why didn't surveillance stop? And he's about the same age. He's 31. The young man he murdered is 38. His name is Yaram Leshinsky. And Milgram, as I mentioned earlier, she was only 26. What the heck? God, right in the Capital Jewish Museum on Wednesday.
Yeah.
He's a Chicago native.
Yeah.
Leaned over the bullet-riddled couple and continued firing, then followed Milgram as she made a desperate attempt to escape, shooting her again, charging document. Oh, yeah. What the hell is wrong with that guy?
Yeah, what an idiot. Yeah.
Murderous idiot.
Yeah, murderous idiot.
You can't retrieve your soul, brother.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. And again, going to Gaza, desperate Palestinians are now raiding food trucks as they enter Gaza.
Yes, because they're desperate. Now you've got what appears happens here is, and this has happened right from the very beginning when they withheld trucks and then let them come in. Early in the war, the UN had a compound full of food, and it was trying to distribute it, and people got desperate. They broke into the compound and took as much as they could because people are desperate. There is no law and order. All the police services and all that are all gone. The Israelis aren't providing police services; they're only providing murder services. Where basically they go in and shoot and kill people. So what you have is the Israelis say, why should we send this stuff in? It only gets grabbed by the black market people. Well, most of it gets grabbed by people who are desperate. So they need some sort of policing force so they can get the goods to a place. But of course, when people know that there is food coming in and they want food for their own family, they're going to jump all over these things and grab whatever is on the trucks and throw them off and that kind of thing. And so why isn't there any kind of security for this trucks, which really drives me nuts? Okay, we'll let the trucks in, let them get looted, and then tell the whole world, see what happens when we let food go into Gaza. It gets looted and it gets sold on the black market.
Yeah.
And well, certainly some of it gets sold on the black market. Certainly some of it's that's what happens in any case. Even in the old sieges of cities back in the day, there was always somebody that had something that could sell. Well, during wartime of rationing, right? There was always somebody that was able to steal some more butter or beef or whatever and sell it to you on the black market.
Well, yeah, on the basis that even in hard times, there's always somebody who's prepared to sell something on the side for extra money.
Now, of course, the Israelis haven't been upfront about this at all. They love that kind of chaos. They make sure that there is no services available. They've weakened the UN. They've weakened Doctors Without Borders. They've weakened all these services. And then when a truck does come in and people who are desperate, because you could think of yourself, right? I'm going to get that truck. I'm going to get that bag of flour, because if I don't get it as it passes by, I might not get it.
Yeah.
That box of water, right? I got kids at home, right? I can't go line up because I know I might never get it because there's not enough. So of course you're going to be acting in desperation.
And the other thing,
let's put it that way: the day-to-day cop on the street, they're not there.
And the other thing about this is that the Gaza Health Ministry has recently stated that there was 29 starvation deaths.
Yeah, and that
adding to the toll of deaths in Gaza.
Yeah, they're just they are weaponizing food, and then when they do put the food in, they make sure that it gets looted and make sure that the image of that is very bad and very poor. So they're manipulating the media, but the media is not buying it this time. So basically, they don't want UNRWA to do it. They don't want the UN to do it. They don't want this. They don't want that. And so who else is there to distribute the food, right? Who else?
Yeah.
And I don't know. They need protection. These convoys need protection. What happens is the food all comes to the entrance points. It is taken off the trucks, inspected, and then put on trucks special for Gaza.
Yep.
So you have the food coming in from whoever the suppliers are. The Israeli army can slow those food during its inspection, can slow down the food supplies going into the Gaza by one means or another, or one excuse by another. But then they load them up on another truck and it goes into Gaza. And then those trucks are quite often attacked or looted. because they have no protection, and you've got a lot of extremely desperate people. You've got 2 million people that don't have flour. They don't have gas to cook, even if they have the flour. I don't know.
And that's in a way why that flour needs to go to the bakeries, because the bakeries can do that stuff.
Yeah, they can bake the bread, which is the basic thing that if you can get flour there, then you can make inexpensive bread and at least get some bread into kids' bellies.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have like things like powdered milk and other things that might bring vitamins and other nutrients, simple foodstuffs like that. You can add vitamins and stuff like that to powdered milk. It'd be good for the children. In the meantime, and I don't know, it's so hypocritical. And the West has said, and I'll say it again, like, this is a massacre. The West will never live this down for the amount of time they've allowed this to happen. You know, when there was even when there was a ceasefire, they had planned that they were not going to maintain that.
They'd already cynically planned around that. Yeah. Absolutely.
They don't care about the hostages. They don't care one bit about the hostages.
And okay, not in the least do they care about the hostages. They're, and you might, it's true that, did on the hostage.
Why do you think the Americans, like, there was one American hostage left? Why do you think the Americans negotiated independently with them? Because they knew the Israelis wouldn't.
Yeah,
they knew the Israelis. If the Israelis realized there was one American left, they're going to keep him in there to keep the American interest in the war. When the one and only American left that was alive came out, they lost leverage.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the least interest. They wanted the American one to stay there the longest in captivity, because that would keep the American interest on it.
Yeah.
Americans sort of could see what was happening and negotiated for the release of that American on their own. Kept the Israelis right out of it.
And that's the right way to have done it. All the foreign people all foreign governments needed to do that for their people. Yeah. Okay, moving on. 2 GM workers are running from Ingersoll to St. Catharines between those two GM plants for men's suicide prevention.
Yeah, this is something that doesn't get spoken about enough. In the world of suicide, men commit suicide 3 times more than women do. 3 times more than women do. And the interesting fact here is women attempt suicide twice, 2 or 3 times more than men do, but men are successful much more. So when men decide to commit suicide, they are final about it. It's no wishy-washy thing. They're going to do it. And that's why there are 3 times as many men commit suicide as women. This whole thing that's done by these 2 GM workers is to bring focus in on that. And one of these guys, I dropped my phone so I can't read the name, has had a friend, old high school friend that had committed suicide. So we don't know. A lot of times we don't even know how many of our old friends throughout have committed suicide. It is a thing that's affecting men, particularly in our society. And this initiative is to make men aware that they can reach out for help. Men are always told to just suck it up and take, and you can handle it. And that's just the way we're built. That's the way our culture talks to us. You can handle it on your own. Like, you can do it. You can don't be a whiner. If something's wrong with you, take care of it yourself. And then you get into the point where there is just desperation, and there is no other way of of doing anything. And like you then you commit suicide. So this is an awareness, and it's not the first time I've heard of this, but it is something that's largely unspoken of in our society, is the incidence of male suicide. And if it had been anyone else, there would be a lot of press or a lot of push to get this done. But men being men, they don't want to talk about it, right? We can handle my problems.
Yeah, and that is actually part of the problem that makes this even worse, because men tend not to talk about these sort of things.
No,
right?
Because that's the way we're built. That's what our culture does to us.
Yeah.
Now I got to get these guys' names up there, so because I dropped my phone and I couldn't read it. Stevenson is one of the guys' names. Here I go. Todd Stevenson and AJ Howard.
That's the ones.
Are walking and running for 30 hours to raise funds awareness for those struggling in silence. Okay. And they have a name for it. It's called, what is it? Something in the darkness. Race Against Darkness. And the final 10 kilometers of the 152-kilometer run from Brian Cullen to St. Catharines, Ontario, and that starts at 11 a.m. May 24th. So it's called Buddy Up. It's called Buddy Up. And basically it's encouraging men to seek help when you're depressed and desperate and feel isolated or feel unaccomplished or whatever, and you just don't have another place to go, nowhere to go, no amount of drugs or alcohol helping you or whatever, then you figure you're gonna take your own life.
Yeah. Okay, so
this is bringing awareness to that, because they know that a lot of these men's lives can be saved if they would just reach out.
Interestingly, you're talking about reaching out, right? So I asked Copilot to tell me about the 2 GM workers running from Ingersoll to St. Catherine plants for men's suicide prevention, right? With the other stuff on it, with all the other information about it, right? And Copilot's response was, "I'm sorry you're feeling that way. You're not alone. There are people who care and want to help." That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to tell me about the news. Tell me about other information here. So there are some things that AI are completely useless at.
Well, the last paragraph here is a quote, basically, and it says,
read it.
I just want people to know it's okay to say I'm struggling. It's okay to say I'm dealing with things. And soon as you open up, that's way stronger than faking it, because men fake it, basically. They pretend they're okay. But you know what? I know what men think, because I'm a man, and I'm thinking, yeah, you guys should do that. You guys, but I can handle it. But you guys that can't handle it, yeah, you go ask for help. That's okay with me that you guys do that, but I won't. That's what I think men think. Okay, yeah, that's a good idea for those other guys.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's an element of it, Dave.
Yeah, it's because men just don't want to look like they're whiny or and I don't know why we think it's very acceptable for a woman to be able to reach out and help and want help, reach out to and kind of admit that they have something wrong in their life and they want it. They're unhappy with their life and all that. So we accept that perfectly. That's fine. That's good. We think women should be able to do that, and we think that's good. You know, we don't think of that as any kind of weakness. We just think it's kind of the mental
And
psyche of a woman. They can do that, but we can't.
okay, I'm
We
gonna
can't.
I'm gonna put this one. I'm gonna put this one up. Um, um, Gary Wilkins is saying my friend Al Todd killed himself by jumping over the falls. I blame the Niagara Regional Police and some piece of shit that said your only option is to kill yourself. Absolutely. Anybody who says that, and if they're in a position like working for the police, they should lose their job. Absolutely. And further, from Gary, he absolutely misses him horribly. Yeah, I understand your pain, right?
Yes. So
I understand it. I do understand it.
yeah.
Right. And
Well, where
the
can
one
you
thing,
turn to? You see, where can you turn to? Like the cop says that. Well, you know, like when you think somebody you know is just complaining for no reason, you say, "Oh, go shoot yourself" or something like that. You know, I mean, you don't say shit like that or so things like that anymore. You don't do that. You have
yeah,
to assume that the person has real problems, particularly men, because they're not about. And when they do try to reach out and they get rebuffed like Al Todd there did, he gets rebuffed. He gets rebuffed by the police. And where is he now going to turn? Where is he going
yeah,
to turn now? He's kind of looked for help or asked for help, and he says, "Look, buddy, you all you can do is jump."
yeah,
Well, you know, but I would expect that poor fellow would have committed suicide anyway, because even if the cops hadn't said anything, there was no place for him to get reprieve. There was no place like women in their network. They chitter, chat, and talk, and they always have other women they could talk to. But men won't do that.
yeah, yeah.
As a matter of fact,
Yeah, because if I'm so, you're absolutely right. Because if I've got a problem, you know, and I don't know, just to use an example, me and my wife are arguing. Let's say, the last person I'm going to talk to is you, Dave, right? And you know, hey, we got on well. We talk about a lot of things, but I'm not going to tell you things like that, am I? You know.
but your wife will go to her best
Yeah,
girlfriend and get
wife
better.
will go and tell her best girlfriend. Yeah, absolutely that.
Yeah. Men won't. And
Yeah.
here's an interesting thing. I watched this. It was a little bit of a news thing. This a big lesbian woman, very tall. She was about 5'10" or 5'11". She was very butchy. She made herself look even more butchy, and wanted to join a male's bowling team because she wanted to know what it was like to be a man, be accepted as a man. So she made herself look as much as a man as she could. She was big anyway. Joined the bowling team, and when asked about what she thought of men being thinking of her being a part of this bowling team for a couple of seasons, she said men are isolated. That's the one thing I found out about men. Men are very isolated. Each man is very isolated. They don't even realize it. And whereas women aren't. They're more likely to have confidants or somebody they could talk to, but not men. So men are very isolated people by our culture or our nature. So
Yeah. All right. So, and more from Gary. The cops did not do their job. I was the last one that Al talked to for 6 minutes earlier. You know, it was the most devastating thing I've ever been through. It was September of 22, 2 years ago. The worst pain I ever dealt with. I can feel your pain. You know. Thank you for opening up, Gary.
Yeah, that's very, very important when we're talking about this particular issue. We have real life experience here where a man could not what?
You blipped for a second.
Oh, we have a real life experience here adding weight to this article
Yeah.
and this movement, this buddy up movement,
Yeah.
where there you have where Gary himself, he tried, but still there was no help for this guy, and the cops made matters worse. But
That's
the
a bloody
fact of
stupid.
them, because of the way men are built and the way they think, it's going to be hard to be able to convince them. Yeah, you can talk
Yeah.
to somebody.
It's a bloody stupid thing to have said. Let's be
Well,
blunt about this.
yeah. And there's also has to be a place where men can go where they don't think anyone else is watching. Too, there has to be some, because that's the way men are built. They don't want all their buddies on the GM line where they work or in the factory where they work that you're going to go get help because you feel depressed and all that. That's the last thing you want. You want anybody to know because you're a guy, right? You
Yeah.
don't want anybody. So it's got to be a way in which they can do it in secret. That's the way we can start anyway, where there's a hotline or a place you can go or a counselor you can talk to and tell them, look, I'm thinking of ending it, and I feel desperate about it. Nobody knows because I smile and joke every day at work, but
Yeah.
how am I going to get
Well,
out
in
of this?
fact,
How am I going to do that? How am I going to do this without the whole world knowing?
yeah. In fact, actually, smiling and joking is often a facade that people who are feeling really bad use to get through how bad they feel.
Sure, and it's a good way of disguising it.
Yes. Yeah. It's often the only way to disguise it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for your contribution, Gary. Right. Very important. What you said there, I think, has made this topic come to life.
Yes, indeed. Thanks,
Right.
Gary.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Anything else? Because I think we can kind of call it quits for the week.
Well, just hats off to these couple of guys that are doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to see someone who almost did commit suicide or was actually saved from committing suicide to be a part of the spokesman. But that's still the male ego is resistant to that. Yeah, I had a problem. I felt weak, and it's not weakness. It's disease. It's social conditioning, whatever it is. So reach out if you need help. Reach out. Like there's no point in suffering. Even if you don't commit suicide, and you've been thinking about it and you never do, you still are suffering. Something's bothering you. Something's limiting your life. Something's holding you down. Try to find out what that is.
Well, in fact, actually, I would go back. It's not just because you're feeling suicidal. It's because you're feeling down, right? Go back a long way before suicide. Go back to those times when you're feeling down. Maybe things didn't go well for you. Maybe you didn't get the raise you were hoping to get and things like that, right? It's about talking to people at that stage before things get so desperate that you're considering suicide.
Usually it's the raise that somebody didn't get is circumstantial. They're already feeling really bad already.
Yeah, and it might
Sometimes
be
even if they
something
do
prior
get
to
the raise, and even if they
Yeah.
do have a successful life, because depression has nothing to do with logic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you for saying that as well. Yeah, absolutely. And, if you feel depressed about anything, talk to somebody.
Well, that's the whole thing. Sometimes you're depressed and you don't even know what it is, which
Yeah.
makes you feel like a wimp because you're feeling so bad and there's nothing really there to why am I feeling so bad about this? I have a house over my head. I got a car. I go with my pals when I want to, but yet I feel terribly unhappy and terribly depressed. What is it that's doing that? And if
Yeah.
that keeps going, the only escape from that you think is, ending it. So there has to be a way of interrupting that.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've gone on too long here.
All right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. There must be a way of ending that. So, So, Dave, I think we can kind of say goodbye to everybody.
Yes. Without further ado, I bid you do not forget Gaza.